The Super League continues to shock the football world as news ripple and snowball and create more and more confusion, but we are trying to make the best out of it and give you all the context that you need. We have Jonathan Johnson, Jimmy Conrad, as we discuss Florentino Perez's remarks from last night's interview regarding the Super League. We also discuss the Premier League as they make a statement in regards to the league and what they will do, PSG, etc. This and much, much more. Qué Golazo begins right now. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Qué Golazo. We continue this Super League conversation as we give you the latest context and updates, information, all you need to know as the Super League has taken over the world of football. And of course, joining us today is JJ, Jonathan Johnson from Paris. JJ, how are you, my friend?
Hey, doing very well. Thanks. And yourself?
I'm good. JJ, it's been a very busy day already. So by the time people hear, things are just continuing to develop. But we wanted to begin, obviously, with Florentino Perez going on Spanish TV last night. Chiringuito TV, who is the chairman of the Super League, obviously Real Madrid as well, boss, basically saying a lot of things. First of all, saying how this league, the Super League, will save football at a time when football needs it the most. Even discussing, how fans are no longer really watching, young fans are not watching, and the Champions League, in essence, is just not a good product. Discussing who the teams we're going to play, the ones that can maybe come later, just so much. It felt, kind of like a circus to me. But what were your initial thoughts from that Florentino Perez conversation with Chiringuito?
I mean, it was incredible, just to sort of be following, what was going on Twitter. Every quote, it just seemed to get worse and worse. Credit, to Chiringuito for actually managing to get arguably the main ringleader to actually sit down and talk about it. But some of the stuff he said, it would have almost been better if he hadn't actually said anything, because I think it now feeds this idea that, a lot of these clubs are following blindly, behind a plan that's not really been very well mapped out. I can tell you for certain that the reaction here in France was one of dumbfoundment, bewilderment, amusement as well, because some of the stuff was just so ridiculous. You couldn't help but laugh when reading some of the stuff. To be honest, it's been an absolute train wreck over the last couple of days, especially the stuff that has come out of the Super League camp. One thing that particularly sticks in my mind from the very beginning was this phrase "legacy fans." It is awful. To be throwing around that kind of language, add that to some of the stuff that Perez was saying in the interview. And it doesn't make for a very convincing proposition. Sure, it's amusing for 5 minutes when you flick through the quotes, but, to think that this could be the future of European soccer, against pretty much everybody else's will, it is scary at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, as we're talking, a few pieces of conversation, I wanted to first begin with you and PSG, because PSG obviously have a huge stake in this. With PSG CEO Nasser Al-Khelaifi speaking for the first time officially about this. What did he say in regards to everything that's been going on, and as he holds, of course, his position with UEFA?
Yeah, well, it's really interesting that Al-Khelaifi has now decided to go on record officially. I think everyone's been waiting since Monday, because we know that Karl-Heinz Rummenigge of Bayern Munich, went on the record, stated his opposition to the Super League. And reading through Al-Khelaifi's press release, he's speaking after his re-election to the UEFA Executive Committee. But, one thing that really jumped out at me as soon as I read it was when he talks about PSG as a football club. He mentions the words family, community, the fabric being the fans, and that shouldn't be forgotten. That is something that's, been profoundly missing from all of the clubs, currently involved in the Super League. And I know a lot has been said over the last couple of days. There's been claims that PSG and Bayern Munich were invited to join this breakaway league. But, I think when you have two clubs like Bayern and PSG who have such, strong opinions on the topic, it's quite obvious that some of the stuff that's been said, notably by Perez last night to Chiringuito, does not ring true. And it seems like, this is, an attempted coup, staged by 12 clubs, with claims that there are more clubs out there, and those claims diminishing by the minute, because there seems to be more and more clubs, big clubs, now stating that emphatically that they, are against this and would rather search for some sort of reform with UEFA. I think there's sort of a global acknowledgement across the board that the Champions League is not necessarily perfect, but it's better than, going and completely starting anew, with this Super League. And I think that's probably the saddest thing in all of this that I found, when there was talk about how clubs that have won Champions Leagues in the past would trade their former trophies for the new Super League trophy. I mean, that is just absolutely ludicrous. You can't just replace something that has decades and decades of history, with something that was born yesterday. It's just, it is absolutely insane, for want of a better word.
Absolutely. And as we're talking, by the way, everybody, so and JJ mentioned, there's so many moving parts going on. To begin with, Pep Guardiola had his press conference ahead of his game against Aston Villa on Wednesday, and he basically was saying, listen, they told me about the announcement was going to come out hours before it happened. No more details after that. Obviously, he's being very diplomatic about it. He has to be. I understand that, as Thomas Tuchel is, and Jurgen Klopp, etc. But he did say, it's interesting to me that a team like Ajax wasn't invited. You're talking about the history of European competition, and also just the essence of football and what it means. You can't separate effort and reward. They both have to be, together, combined. There's also players after the Liverpool-Leeds game discussing, James Milner from Liverpool as well, discussing Pat Bamford, of course. So there's this ongoing thing, reports that Manchester City and Chelsea maybe are teams that are a little shaky about what's going on. Maybe they were pressured into accepting this Super League. So there's a lot going on. And by the way, as we're talking, Jonathan Johnson, the Premier League has already come out with their statement, saying the Premier League, alongside the FA, met with clubs today to discuss the immediate implications of the Super League. The 14 clubs at the meeting unanimously and vigorously rejected the plans for the competition. The Premier League is considering all actions available to prevent it from progressing, as well as holding those shareholders involved to account under its rule. The league will continue to work with key stakeholders, including fan groups, government, UEFA, the FA, EFL, PFA, and LMA, to protect the best interests of the game and call on those clubs involved in the proposed competition to cease their involvement immediately. The Premier League would like to thank fans, etc. The reaction proves just how much our open pyramid and football community means to people. So there you have it. The Premier League officially, vigorously rejects it. Every team that's not involved in the Super League rejects it completely and is calling for immediate, suspension, cancellation, leave the Super League, etc. Your reactions to that?
It's welcome for a start. I think that all leagues across Europe, particularly the leagues that have clubs involved at this moment in time, so the Premier League, La Liga, Serie A, you need to come out with a firm and unequivocal response. That seems to be the case so far, so I'm happy to see that from the Premier League. Another little tidbit on there as well, there are reports starting to emerge that a meeting between all of the Premier League captains has been called by Liverpool's Jordan Henderson, to discuss the situation. So this could get very interesting if the players start to mobilize. We've seen a couple, dotted across Europe, coming out and speaking or, commenting on others' social media posts, for example, about how they're, very skeptical about the idea of the Super League and want to remain loyal to the values, the ideas that they've grown up with the Champions League. There just seems to be developments every, couple of minutes at this moment in time. It's moving at the speed of light. It's very difficult to follow it all in real time. And going back to the situation with Pep Guardiola, I think the thing that I found the most interesting about that was the way that Manchester City's Twitter feed was sharing in great detail everything that Guardiola was saying, pulling no punches, and that suggests to me, it kind of feeds this idea that, City perhaps are not, quite sold on the way that this is being handled. It seems to me like a couple of clubs, were, I'm not going to say held at gunpoint, but certainly put under a lot of pressure to join without enough time to really reflect, and without enough time for a proper strategy to be put in place, to try to bring this into effect. And because of that, there's just mass confusion across all of the clubs, whether they're part of the breakaway idea or not. And it feeds this idea that it's every man for himself right now. And I think Pep Guardiola even said that at one point towards the end of his press conference before it was cut off. By the way, he was happy to answer further questions. He was told not to, so Pep was silenced after, going into a fair amount of detail. So, that was another interesting development. I mean, there's just so many different things, we can analyze. But I think the thing that has been really, really heartwarming is that so many clubs, including our beloved Aston Villa, have come out, and shown exactly, what, the competition means to them, whether it's, vying for promotion, battling against relegation, trying to qualify for Europe, winning a domestic cup. These moments are moments that unite all of us as soccer fans. And we're not alone in feeling outraged about the proposition of this Super League. And the more and more people talk about it, the more ludicrous the idea seems. And it is really, really heartening to know that all of the other Premier League clubs have pulled together, and will now oppose this. And hopefully there will be some sanctions imposed. And I just cross my fingers that it's going to be enough to put the brakes on this Super League situation.
Yeah, well said, my friend. And by the way, mentioning, just echoing, if Jordan Henderson reportedly is indeed holding this meeting, it's already creating a ripple effect, not just among fans and, pundits or whatever, but players themselves, because I think I just leave it to that Pep Guardiola part where when he said, I was told about this hours before the announcement came out and I have no other details. That to me is insane. We have Fabrizio Romano on yesterday saying that players were messaging him on Sunday night, asking him about the Super League and how it's going to work. So to me, that's just incredible, just absolutely unbelievable. And it just all falls as well. Florentino Perez on Chiringuito as well, discussing so many ridiculous things that just don't make sense. And it seems to say that it's such an exclusive conversation right now. Jonathan Johnson, before we say goodbye to you, obviously the Premier League just came out with a statement. PSG knows where they stand. Serie A met yesterday. Is there anything else that we're looking ahead in the next day or so that we may be aware of? Obviously we know that things are coming from all over, but anything to really specifically look out for?
I mean, that's a really good question, because it's really difficult to know at the start of each day at the moment, what could happen, because there's so many different developments that go on. I'm really, really keen to know what comes of that meeting of the captains, assuming that it does take place. I mean, let's stress at this moment in time that there is so much coming out that, we can only sort of go based on, what a lot of our reliable colleagues are reporting. There's other stuff that's been said as well about the likes of Manchester United players, for example, being completely blindsided by this, and basically demanding, a meeting to know exactly what's going on and why United have suddenly been dragged into this Super League mess. So it does sound like we could be moving towards a pivotal moment where the players, particularly in the Premier League, put their heads together and really, try to work out a solid United position. We've seen them come together before, particularly during the COVID-19 times, and fingers crossed, they come together with another very strong response. And judging, by the opinions voiced by current players, by former players, current coaches, former coaches, soccer luminaries all across Europe, it seems like it's going to be overwhelmingly against the Super League. So, I hope that if that meeting does go ahead between the captains, that all the players stand firm and, stand up for what they believe in, because, it's really touching to know that the same things that we value, guys who can't step out on the pitch week after week, we have the same values. We aspire to the same things as these players, as the coaches, as the staff. Everybody wants to see their team succeed in the same kind of way, whatever the relative goal of that club may be. Like I said earlier, you might be fighting for a title, fighting against relegation, fighting to qualify for Europe or win a domestic cup. Without that, without the threat of dropping out of the league, the threat of failure, as Pep Guardiola put it, it's not sport. There's no competition there, and it's not worth investing in. So I really hope that the players, the coaches, everybody comes together and rails against this, because it is, it would be the death knell for soccer as we know it, in its modern form.
Jonathan Johnson, always excellent. Make sure that you follow him on Twitter, John_LeGossip. His content as well on CBS Sports. Make sure that you read it. JJ, thank you very much.
As always, my friend, an absolute pleasure. Speak soon.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Qué Golazo. Usually we begin with Jimmy Conrad, but I wanted to end it. It's like a good dessert. Let's end it with Jimmy Conrad. Jimmy C., how are you, my friend?
I'm good. I'm curious as to which dessert people think I am. I don't know. That's up for discussion.
I'm thinking like a really delicious gelato with like different.
All right. I'll take it.
Yeah, a very summery gelato.
Lots of energy. You're feeling good every time you take a bite.
Oh yeah, a lot of sugar in that gelato. Hey everybody, welcome back to Qué Golazo. We just had Jonathan Johnson, of course, discussing laying out the land, and I wanted obviously Jimmy. Part of this because, Jimmy, first of all, give me just your reaction as this snowball continues to grow.
So when everything was dropping, it's when you had Heath and I on Sunday, we're still speculating and hearing a lot of things. And now that I've had a few days to process and some time to continue to get more information about what's happening and the reaction from some pretty prominent people across the landscape, yeah, this is a shit show. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but this is an absolute shit show, Luis, and I'm here for it. I've got the popcorn, and I'm kind of curious to see how it's all going to play out. It is fascinating. The Florentino Perez stuff, I mean, could you talk to somebody who's more out of touch with the younger people in the world? I don't think you could. Some of his statements were asinine. I'm trying to think of a way to soften my my cussing from before, with the smart word that I actually read books sometimes. I just, the whole thing is fascinating. And I feel bad for the managers in some capacity that have to go out and speak for their club when they don't have all the information. That said, I do applaud the ones that have the courage to say, yeah, this is crap. This is BS. And there's just no way this should happen. And I'm here for that too. And so I'm kind of curious to see how this whole thing unfolds. We're all sitting here on the edge of our seat. Like, this is insane. This is wild. And for us as MLS supporters, I don't know if you touched upon this with Jonathan at all, but our league is kind of set up, not like for like, but there's a lot of similarities to how the Super League would be set up. And it's interesting to be an MLS supporter, to be a former MLS player. And I want to say, when the league started, it made sense to have this type of infrastructure in place. So it created some stability. One of the big issues that I have is that I thought at some point that the owners themselves, when they'd come in and buy in, would want the handcuffs off so they could go spend and do whatever they wanted to do. But apparently that's not how it's all working out, and starting to look very similar to the NFL, but it's run by a guy that got, his experience at NFL Europe with Don Garber. And there is some level of credit he deserves for creating a robust league that it's turned into. But I always thought it was going to evolve into a little bit more of a promotion relegation type situation once the infrastructure underneath became more mature and we could really put ourselves in that spot. But it doesn't look like it's playing out that way unless it's still MLS controlled into MLS 1 and MLS 2. So I have a lot to unpack on that side of things. And I got fired from a job for taking a step into the promotion relegation waters. If you want to get into that too, but it's just fascinating to me how this is touching everybody, and that there's so much outrage. And I think it's because this is the one thing that hits home, to get into the why isn't racism? Why isn't gender equality? The gender equality or any of it. Why isn't it having the same type of reaction globally? We see that from some of my former black teammates on the national
team. Women's game itself.
Yeah, what's the story? Like, why now? But I think it's because not everybody can relate to racism at that level, obviously. And the ones that can are obviously very empathetic to it and trying to create change. The ones that don't have any clue are like, yeah. That it doesn't hit home. This one hits home for everybody because it really is impacting kind of the nature of the game and what that means for the future of it. And I think that touches almost everybody globally. It's been pretty remarkable, the negative reaction to this that they probably were not expecting.
Yeah, absolutely. And this negative reaction, by the way, is throughout everything. We saw it in the Leeds-Liverpool game outside of the stadiums. Players are already voicing their opinion. Marcus Rashford has already come out with a tweet. It's a sign. Matt Busby comment, football is nothing without fans. So we have this ripple effect. And the biggest one that we talked about with JJ, and I wanted your opinion on this as a former player, a former leader on the pitch as well. Jordan Henderson has called for a meeting for all captains in the Premier League for Wednesday. And that's big. Jordan Henderson, the captain of Liverpool, a founding member of the Super League, is calling for a meeting for all players in the Premier, all captains in the Premier League to meet and discuss. By the way, and we also discussed with JJ the Premier League statement of vigorously rejecting TSL, etc. So what are your thoughts on that? Jordan Henderson just saying, listen, let's meet.
I love it. As a former captain myself, there was a certain level of responsibility that you took to protect your players, to help educate your players to the bigger issues. I was also part of the executive committee for the MLS Players Association and did that with pride and distinction. I'd like to think, that I helped us work through that first CBA, and it's a lot. It's a lot of responsibility. It's a lot of communication. There's a lot of players in different types of situations. And so you need to be open to anything, whether they have a big family or insurance or all these little things that maybe you didn't take into consideration. And I think being a leader helps you put yourself in other people's shoes. And I think that's really important. And so for Jordan Henderson to step up and say, hey, we got to talk. I think that shows, one, that the players are going to decide how much they're going to weigh in. And that could influence a lot, because if the players don't buy in, of the biggest clubs, the ones that are in the Super League, that could really sway, not saying all 12 clubs, but that could sway a lot of the clubs to maybe reconsider this whole notion. And maybe UEFA, we still, I think, are under the assumption, or hopeful, that this was just a power play to get some more of the cake, as I like to say, from UEFA with regard to the Champions League finances and profits. But I don't know, this it's really disappointing in a lot of different ways. And I think that's probably the key word here. Very disappointing, a key phrase. And I like that it got announced, because they could have done that in secret. They're clearly making a statement of, we're getting together, we're going to talk. And I think the players need to decide what their options are. If I was a player, I would publicly, they're not responsible. They weren't aware of this stuff, right? But they are role models for so many of us, right? Both on and off the field. And they now have the power, maybe a little bit more power than they think they do, to influence how this is all going to go. And so I like the move by Jordan Henderson, and I'm curious to see who shows up and who doesn't. I feel like if you're you have to go. If you're the one guy that doesn't go, and you're like, you look like you have to go. Like, the peer pressure is immense.
Yeah, there is no way that you can.
You have to go. And so I hope that this is a domino, right? We're going to see these little dominoes. And if one team pulls out of the Super League, because there is a rumor that 2 of the English clubs are now reconsidering their position.
Yeah, Man City and Chelsea, yeah.
That's for sure, Man City and Chelsea?
It's not for sure, but it's highly reported that those are that. It's not for sure. It's a report. And I'm also not, I wouldn't be shocked if it was those 2, because I'm also reading that they were, some of these teams were pressured into doing it, sort of like Liverpool and United and Real Madrid were almost bullying everybody, going, listen, you better be part of this because we're going to be left behind, et cetera, and Man City and Chelsea, without knowing everything. That's my opinion, based on a report that we're reading. The Man City and Chelsea might be the ones.
Yeah, I think what's happening, what it's working towards, is that Real Madrid are going to want all the money, and they're going to be in a league of one team, and they're going to win the trophy every single season. It's going to be amazing. Congratulations to Real Madrid for winning the Real Madrid League. It's ridiculous. I mean, that's how this whole thing's looking to evolve.
And the only thing that I'll add, by the way, and very well said about the players and stuff as well, and the ripple effect is creating havoc. That's what's happening. A lot of teams in the Super League are reacting to the negativity of what's happening. And it's also part of it insane to me that some of that just shows how out of touch they are, that these fans, did they think they were going to welcome this with open arms? It's absolutely ridiculous. But the other thing that I wanted to say as well was that this really affects academies, youth academies of every team, because youth academies rely so much on their pyramid structured competition. Like an Aston Villa under 18s doesn't just play an Aston Villa team in the Premier League. They rely on other people. And the other thing is also UEFA competitions. Like if you completely, if UEFA says you are out of everything, UEFA, FIFA, that affects youth players as well. And of course, the women's game, which is huge. And it's a complete mess. And the fact that they did this behind their backs is also another part of it that's just incredible to me.
When I think about Andrea Agnelli, the Juve president, who on a Saturday said everything's fine, nothing's going to happen, and then on Sunday announces he's going to step down from two very important roles within UEFA and the ECA, and then says Juve is going to join the Super League. How does that guy regain his reputation? I mean, even if this thing gets scaled back, how is he going to dance? Is he ready for the PR that has to happen to kind of regain respect in the community? I just don't. That's a bold ass move he made. And Florentino Perez, I think everybody kind of considers him the crazy grandpa, so he can kind of keep going down that route. But for Agnelli, who seems to be a very smart guy, of course, but I just don't know if they were ready for this backlash. It has been strong and it's been quick, and I think they're going to back down, just maybe even due to public pressure alone.
Yeah, it's going to be. And by the way, it's been very official from other teams, not in the Super League. Everton's CEO as well, with a statement earlier today, literally like speaking to the fans, which was kind of amazing. Basically, condemning what was going on as well. The head of the European UEFA Women's as well, Nadine Kessler as well talking. I mean, obviously I get that part, but
I will say it's a lot easier after seeing the backlash as to like, yeah, we're on your side, we're with the fans. So I take that with the.
But I do like though that it's literally
I agree, but I still.
No, I get it. You wait.
Maybe my cynicism is seeping in here. I will say though, Everton, I don't know how much of a leg they have to stand on since they were one of the 5 teams that broke away to create the Premier League. But it's new ownership, of course. It's new ownership. It's new ownership, of course, and. No, it's always fun to be on the right side of history, I suppose. But it's I just find that's all. I'm just throwing that little grain of salt.
No. Everything comes with a pinch of salt, Jimmy Conrad. Sure, we know that. So it's not like everybody's acting because they're the next Mother Teresa. We get it. And by the way, that's been my whole argument this whole time. Okay, UEFA is not perfect. All right, the Champions League is not perfect. Clearly, this is a business. Clearly, they want to. Make sure that they accumulate as much revenue as possible, etc. But there is a chance and an opportunity to earn a spot in the Champions League. Atalanta, right, earned their right to be there. Okay. And the other thing is like it is distributed in one way or another. It may not seem fair to some, whatever, but there is a distribution. This doesn't do any of that. It's completely exclusive, and it affects the domestic leagues because why would Liverpool care about a top 4 spot? Like,
listen, I tried to watch the Liverpool Leeds game yesterday, and I actually don't have any interest in this.
Like, why would you, right? Like Villa's playing Man City tomorrow. Like, why would you?
There's nothing riding on these games anymore. So
at this moment, there isn't, because why would you go for a top 4 spot? It's just so it doesn't make any sense. And the other thing that people don't understand is that Atalanta, I say it again because they're such a good example in the Champions League. When they welcome Real Madrid to their stadium, that's huge for them in terms of revenue. That's massive. That's important. That helps them financially. So now that's not going to happen according to these smaller teams. I know that the first games in the group stages in the Champions League can be not as exciting. But in a non-COVID year, what it does to those teams is huge. It's massive. Even teams like, Ajax and stuff like that, they need this revenue. So people need to understand it. It may not be like an obvious huge problem, but piece by piece, month by month, fixture by fixture, this really affects everything. And yeah, I mean, that's all I have to say. James Corden, the Late Show, even talked about this.
He was emotional. I saw that.
Yeah.
He was upset because it strikes you in a way like, man, you're taking away the spirit of the game, and as I tweeted out after our last time I was on Sunday, I said, what makes the game special is inclusivity, not exclusivity. Like this is a game for everybody, not just the ones that have all the money. And it's just interesting to me that the richest clubs are looking to get more rich as opposed to trying to help spread it around and continue to grow the game and strengthen the ones around it. But they just want a guaranteed ticket to the big dance. They don't want to have to earn it or work for it. So it's interesting. Man, we're just at the tip, man. I think this is going to take a little while to figure out. That said, I didn't like that Florentino Perez came out and said, oh, don't worry, they'll still be in the Champions League. Legally, they still need to play. Well, okay, yeah, sure, legally they still need to play, but it's really taken all the air out of it. It's really lost some of its steam. And so they need to make a decision on these Champions League teams and Europa League teams as to whether they're actually going to be eligible to participate next week.
Yeah. It's going to be very, all right. Well, I mean, listen, everybody, like we said, every day this week, this is our main focus. Obviously, we'll hit on things that as they come, as we talked Jose Mourinho yesterday.
It's changing so much. What do you? There's going to be more to talk about. There's more to talk about for sure.
Literally, as I was taping with JJ, the news of the Premier League statement came out. So we have to just continue to discuss this. But Jimmy Conrad, final words before we say goodbye as we wrap another Super League episode.
No, I think everything's going to work out. I'm hopeful and
so you're optimistic.
I am. I'm a hopeless romantic that the people have been awakened in a way, and the players are emboldened, and even your longtime rival, you're probably on the same page with that person and can just set down those rivalries for a second and just.
I was rooting for Leeds United yesterday.
I know.
I'm an Aston Villa fan. Like, come on.
Exactly. So it's really changed the narrative in a lot of different ways, and I'm hopeful that this type of pressure that everybody, this outrage that everybody feels towards these decisions, will hopefully rectify some of that. And the UEFA president came out this morning and said, hey, everybody makes mistakes. If they want to come back in, I'm like, okay, now, saying that publicly is funny because now you're trying to shame them with your statements. I don't know. I don't know what the exit strategy or the how they're going to solve this and resolve this, but I'm hopeful that there's a lot of sensible people behind the scenes because there's a lot of emotion. All I see is a lot of emotion. When you have exco or executive committee members coming out saying, well, they should be banned from the Champions League right away. Like that's an emotional response. We still need people behind the scenes that are being sensible, that are keeping emotion out of it for now, not taking things personal and trying to figure out what the best solution is. I don't know if that actually exists because I feel like it's because of what you said before, there's a lot of backstabbing and people lying to each other's face. So that's going to take some time to mend.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm hopeful. That said, I'm hopeful.
No, me too. I'm also optimistic. I'm always glass half full. So we'll see what happens. But Jimmy Conrad, thank you so much, brother.
Thank you.
Hey, everybody. I want to thank Jonathan Johnson and Jimmy Conrad for joining me today. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Qué Golazo Pod. Follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube, youtube.com/Qué Golazo, CBSSports.com. Every day this week begins with the Super League and everything that you need to know. So make sure that you stay tuned. Have a great, great rest of your day.